When you look back at the 2022 season of the Denver Broncos, and everybody should, it should serve as an example, a reminder, a guiding light of how important it is to really evaluate the decisions you're going to make, to really think through the whys. Just calling it out. That's key. Be careful when hiring a head coaching candidate that when you're hiring an offensive coordinator that was not even a play caller in their previous role, you better feel really, really, really good about that. You better feel really good about their ability to be a locker room CEO when they didn't even have all of the applicable responsibilities of a traditional coordinator, whether it be offense or defense. In this case, we'll say offense. You also should be really, really careful going all in on a veteran quarterback that another team wants to trade. Specifically, be sure to really ask yourself, why would a team look to trade away a franchise quarterback who's supposed to still be in the peak of their career? Why would a team, in effect, choose a 71-year-old head coach over a 9-time Pro Bowl quarterback that's only 33 years of age? Let's stop right there and think about that for a second. A team has, in theory, the most valuable, most important commodity that any team can have, that teams spend years, if not decades, ask the Bears, desperate in their search to find, and that is a franchise quarterback. And the Seattle Seahawks, for a decade basically, had one. And they couldn't wait to get rid of him. They couldn't wait to move on. They were willing to stick with a 71-year-old head coach. At that point in time, if you're trading away Russell Wilson, it means you're going into a rebuild. Teams in these types of spots and situations really need to ask themselves the powerful question of why. Why would the Seahawks do that? Why would they think that's a good idea? And your answer you may come out with is say, well, they're kind of stupid. They're wrong on this. And that sometimes can absolutely be the answer. Other times, though, when you ask that question why, and you really think about it, it should lead you to come to a realization of, oh, they're doing this for a reason. Warning, warning, danger, danger. That's the lesson you should learn about the whole Russell Wilson trade. And then the Broncos, their front office, made the problem even worse by giving Russell Wilson a massive contract extension when they technically didn't have to. Like they were making a statement by doing so, committing to him like they did when they didn't really need to, and may very well pay a steep price for having done so. So sometimes when you see certain players are available in the trade market, certain players are allowed to hit open free agency, you've got to ask the question why. And that why does not always have to be a negative answer. But you must ask it. And clearly the Denver Broncos did not ask some of these tough questions of why. They got so blinded by the thought of something, they got so blinded by the vision of something, that they ignored basic reality. So when you look at the Denver Broncos 2022 season, it's not a surprise that things went poorly. And let's be clear. When early on in the season, you have to bring in a consultant basically because your head coach is so bad at clock management and game management decisions, you know you've done effed up. Period. Which was borne out and evident by the fact that Nathaniel Hackett didn't even make it through a full season as the Denver Broncos head coach. And he shouldn't have, because he was really, really bad. The number one goal of the program was to be able to show that he could work with Russell Wilson, put Russell Wilson in a good spot, get the best out of Russell Wilson, and he did the exact opposite. You could argue got the absolute worst out of Russell Wilson that we've seen out of Russ in his decade plus in the league. Because he absolutely sucked. Don't put any positive spin on it. When you trade what the Broncos traded to get Russell Wilson, when you give up the amount of money in terms of guaranteed contract that the Broncos gave up for Russell Wilson, you cannot look at those considerations and factors and look at Russell Wilson's performance in 2022 and say he did anything other than absolutely raging suck fucking Bronco Badger cock. He was horrible. And as a result, the Broncos offense was 32nd in points scored. And think about just how bad and putrid that Broncos offense under Nathaniel Hackett was. How bad and putrid Russell Wilson was as the team's starting quarterback. If in all of their losses, the Broncos had just scored 20 points, mediocre to even below mediocre offensive performance in each of those losses, this team would have finished 11-6 and at least made the playoffs. That's crazy. That speaks to just how bad things went wrong. You know, to the point where you're making an in-season deal and you're sending Bradley Chubb away for a first-round pick. When you trade for somebody like a Russell Wilson, you wouldn't be looking to trade away other marquee pieces because the thought being is you're trying to go all in. And they did the exact opposite. That's how bad it went. In terms of what went right, I guess you could say the defense did its part. They were a playoff-level unit. And I guess if you want to go there, you could say, well, the Broncos, you know, still were able to recoup some type of draft pick capital, got a first-round pick back for Bradley Chubb, so it's not all lost as opposed to potentially going into the offseason and losing them via free agency for maybe a future third or fourth-round compensatory pick. Yeah, if you were going to not be able to keep him anyways, 'tis better to trade him in season to get a first-round pick than wait a whole nother year to get one of those compensatory maybe third-round picks. I get you there, but there wasn't a lot that went right here. So the Broncos did what they had to do in hiring Sean Payton, which leads to them giving up more draft pick capital. But the reality is that they're going to have to go with Russell Wilson at least for 2023. You got to throw everything behind it now. You got to double down on the mistake. If you're not going to admit this is a sunken cost and already just move on, then you got to do everything you can to maximize on that investment. Even if that means sometimes you have to double down on it and you have to go even more in. The Broncos went out and brought in a head coach that's won a Super Bowl as a head coach. Those types of guys don't make it on the market all the time. They go for the head coach that knows his shit and, more importantly, will not put up with any bullshit from Russell Wilson. You've seen some recent reports talking about he had his own separate offense out of the separate floor. And, you know, some other teams do have that for their quarterbacks. That's true. But if you only focus on that, you just miss some of the bigger pieces. Like, Russ isn't a bad guy, but he's got some absolutely phony baloney fucking elements to him that can make it really hard to buy into and believe in him and follow him. And even from the outside looking in, you can see this. And if Broncos fans don't want to admit that to themselves, that's fine, but they're just being disconnected with reality. It's not so easy to embrace Russell Wilson. You could tell, like, he enjoys being Russell Wilson and what that means sometimes more than he enjoys being great at his job. It's just true. And now you got a situation where you brought in Sean Payton and you're hoping that's going to make a big difference because you don't have a lot of flexibility in the offseason. You know, you don't have a ton of cap space. You got that first-round pick in the Bradley Chubb deal, but still not a ton of draft capital in general, certainly not premier draft capital. Whereas if the Broncos had their own first-round pick, at least it would be a top 5 pick. Well, that's owned by the Seattle Seahawks now. They better hope to God that Russ plays well in 2023, is what I can say. They better hope so, as they need it to, because they're kind of stuck with where they're at right now. But if you're looking at 2022 and feeling a lot of reason for hope or optimism for the Denver Broncos, you need to really stop and reassess the situation, because there's absolutely no reason to believe other than you have full confidence that Sean Payton's going to get a resurgent year out of Russell Wilson. Maybe it could happen, but I don't know, because I don't even know that Sean Payton's offensive system fits well with Russell Wilson's skills. So good luck with this, Denver, because you're going to need it, is what I'm saying.